Hello, and welcome to the third and final week of our emergency preparedness topic thing. We talked a lot. We had a lot of things to say. Hopefully, you thought the things we said are interesting. I had a feeling Mark has done most of the talking. Will continue to do most of the talking as long as it isn't an in or an out. Because I seem to not let Mark talk there. Mark seems to not let me
I'm
talk
fine
in the
with
middle
that.
of the video. It's our shtick. We'll stick with it.
Right.
So hopefully you guys think this is interesting. Hopefully you dig it. We're going to be wrapping it up this week, and thank you for sticking around for all of this if you watched them all.
Shelter.
Exactly, which something, like you said, you have waterproof
Right.
bags, you have spare
Yeah.
boots, so that's to keep stuff dry. Maybe you
Right.
can't keep things dry, so you need to hold up for the night, build a fire, and keep yourself safe for an evening while you're maybe drying out some clothes, because maybe you didn't splurge and get those waterproof bags, or you don't have an extra pair of shoes.
Right. Yeah. So the number one thing, and it's going to be obvious to people, but maybe not to some, is going to be a tarp. Now, I didn't go for what I'm about to advise because I saved some money. Because honestly, all this gear was about $400. So I saved some money some places, but it's a tarp. My recommendation is camo on one side, and then a brighter color on the inside. So that way, if you're trying to be seen, you use the brighter side. If you're trying not to be seen, use the darker side. And that could be just that you're trying to go camping and you don't want to disturb the wildlife, right? Or you're hunting. Maybe you don't want to be seen. You want to pop up a shelter because, it started raining. Let me set up a shelter. So tarps. And this one is, I actually don't remember. I took off the tags, but I remember it's large enough to fit 2 people, which you might think, well, what if I'm just going alone? Well, how much gear are you carrying? Your gear is going to occupy the space of a second person, really.
Right.
So if you have 2 people going with you, you might want a 4-person tarp or something big enough to cover 4 persons. But realistically, I think this is about 8 by 8, somewhere in that range. And it has the metal grommets all over it to tie it up places, which you definitely want because you don't want to have to punch holes in your tarp every time you want to string it up. I do have a second tarp, so one goes on the ground, one goes over the top. But on that note, paracord.
Bless you.
Oops. Paracord. I recommend as much as you can buy in a single package. I'm not saying like have 50 strands of rope, right? Rope isn't that important. But I think at least a couple hundred feet, maybe 200-300 feet, because it goes real quick. You might think, oh, well, maybe I just want 50 feet. 50 feet isn't a lot if you're trying to set up a shelter or if you're trying to set up I made a hammock out of paracord one time. It's pretty awesome if you're trying to set up a hammock. Because maybe you're hiking and just really bored. You've gone out in the wilderness to survive for 7 days, and everything's going according to plan. Maybe you make a hammock, right? Paracord, I recommend somewhere between 200 and 500 feet, depending on what you want to do. And in addition to that, you can add as much extra rope as you want in random places. Like I have on my backpack, I have a carabiner, right? That is rated for climbing, and that's important. Because normally the ones you get on your keychain aren't rated for climbing. I have a second carabiner up here as well. That's seen a little bit more love. And rust for that matter. But the carabiner is attached to a lanyard, which actually, when I was in the military, I carried a pistol on this. And this was one I made myself, just weaving paracord back and forth. But the great part is, like, this probably has about 100 feet of paracord on it, something like that. So if I needed to unravel it and use it, I could. But at the end of this is a compass, which we'll get to in a minute when we get to rescue stuff.
Yes.
But as for more shelter stuff, Punch goes over there now. This one, I don't know what they're called in the. I think they're like sleeping bag covers in the civilian world. Military world, most people recognize this. It's called bivy cover. Which these are awesome. So on one side you have your camo pattern. On the floor side you have your tan pattern. And essentially you crawl inside of your sleeping bag and then you crawl inside of this, and it should weatherproof it, right? And then it has all sorts of like ways to tighten it up and all of that. This one even has Velcro on it for a reason unknown. I bought this used. Generally these go for about $100 new. I bought it used for about 30 because it has holes in it that have been patched, but still had holes in it, which now I can't find them. So good on it. These are great because it's a tube of fabric pre-ready to go. So I've carried people in training on these as stretchers. You can easily make it into a stretcher, you and another person putting one person inside of here and then carrying them long distance. If you get a sturdy one, you can use it as a hammock. So maybe you want to get off the floor, the canopy floor, so you can stay away from bugs and such. Theoretically, like if you get a good quality one, you can actually string it up like a hammock. Yeah, and there's just a lot of uses. Stretcher, shelter for your sleeping bag. I don't have a sleeping bag in here because that's really going to depend on you. If you live in like Arizona, you might not want a sleeping bag because it's just going to be added heat. You might want the bivy cover still because you want to keep out bugs and stuff, but you might not want a sleeping bag. But if you're in Alaska, you might want a super heavy duty sleeping bag. Just go camping, figure out what works for you. But
I was going to say another use for paracord could be, and why you might want so much, because like you said, it goes quick, right?
Mhm.
Say you're on the move, maybe you dropped your bag, maybe some stuff fell out, maybe you used some parts of your kit. Improvised tourniquet, potentially, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would recommend something like a belt first, but definitely you could very well use it as a tourniquet or use it to tie on branches to your leg to give yourself a splint if you break your leg. Yeah, tourniquets have all sorts of uses. You never want to think that you have enough. It's like paracord for the military or survival applications is like duct tape in the civilian world. But yeah, so that's great. And then, did you have anything? Or
No,
I had one more shelter.
Okay, you had one more thing? Cool.
Yeah. And that's going to be one of these. Now, this doesn't look like most people are used to, but it is a space blanket, thermal blanket, whatever you want to call it, it's normally silver. I turned it inside out because I don't like the shiny bit. Because maybe I am trying to be sneaky or camping and not trying to call too much attention to myself. But then again, this is also red. So really useful if you're not expecting cold weather. If you are expecting cold weather, then pack warm blankets and things like that. But if you're not expecting cold weather, this is really useful. Get one that is actually big enough to go over a person. I think this is like 7 foot by like 6 foot or something. So it's a rather large one. And I got it for, again, redundancy purposes, which is actually our next topic of rescue. So I got this because I wanted something bigger that if I am out in the middle of nowhere, I can stretch it out and either put the reflective side or the non-reflective side, which is what I suggest, unless you're out in the middle of nowhere. But if you're in like tree line, if you're in like a forest environment, putting the reflective side out can actually cause it to reflect the trees and make it hidden, whereas the red side is going to stand out pretty well. So yeah, it's a great use for that. And on the same, I mentioned the waterproofing bag being orange, because you could very well open it up, stick it on top of a tree or a cactus, or plant it somewhere where you can find it, and or where people can see it from a good distance. And now you have a flag blowing in the wind, a wind flag. You can even, if it's a drier environment, maybe you're not so worried about waterproofing, you can even cut a hole in the backside and makes it a wind tunnel flag, which works really well. But then the next one, which a lot of people don't know about, signal mirror. I'm gonna. There we go. That's why I didn't want to carry it on that side. Right. So it's a mirror. I actually took the original package I bought it in, cut out the little plastic bit, and then taped it over the front. And what this is, I'm gonna try and keep it this way towards the camera so it doesn't blind everyone. But what this is essentially you hold out your hand, you find the sun, you shine the sun onto your hand, then look at your hand through the little hole in the center, and then you look at a plane or a helicopter or whatever like that. And it allows you to angle the sun back at them and be able to see it. Now, the way that's the way that the back of the package says to use it. I was always taught to, once you find the sun and you know where it is, to look through it, open your fingers so you're shining the light through, and then keeping your fingers in front of that light, shine it on the plane. That way you can tell that, because you might only get one chance to signal it. So you want to make sure that you can tell that the light is being shined in that direction, right? Whereas if you didn't do that, it's a guess at best, right? But another interesting feature, don't know how well it would work, but everyone knows that when you reflect something like this, it's going to be a bigger target when it goes because light scatters. But this has a star in the middle because it's supposed to be like a man-made object, so people will see it. I don't know whether that's true or not, but it was the cheapest one they had that actually had the viewing port. So, and it has a lanyard or a little loop on there. You can tie it to your belt or something if you wanted to. We talked about the compass briefly, but this is what's called a lens-static compass. I believe that's how you pronounce it. And what this is it opens. Now, I still have my instructions in here. That way, in case someone else who doesn't know how to use a compass needs it. But basically, you have your normal compass bit there. Generally has a bit more information than a normal compass. But I recommend one with tritium in it. It's going to be more expensive, but it will glow in the dark for the next 5 years, whether or not there's sun around. So it has a magnifying glass on that end and a little notch over the magnifying glass. And then it has the hole and the little line on that side. So what that's for is you find out, okay, I'm looking at my map because old school maps, not cell phones. I have my map. I know I need to be going southeast or whatever. And what this allows you to do is you fold this side to 90 degrees approximately, and then you fold this side in so you can see using the magnifying glass over here to this side of the compass, the side that's actually going to be pointed at it. You line up the magnifying glass to that so you can read it. And then, because it's not just north, south, east, and west, it has the full 360. But anyway, so you can read it. And then you line up the notch over the magnifying glass with the notch here. And then while reading, let's see, while reading it, you might have to drop it down, I guess, but while you can read the dial, you look through the little notch in the front, and you can pick out like that tree or that rock or that some kind of landmarker, and then you can either close this up or keep it out. It doesn't really matter, but you can then walk towards a object, and that way you know that you just went southwest or whatever, versus your original position. So it's really helpful. It's really good if you're going to spend the money on a compass, which I recommend pretty much everyone does. Then get a lens static compass, because it makes life a lot easier for navigating. And that's not just because that's how I learned to navigate, but some other things you can do. So obviously you can start a fire for that kind of purposes. I've glow sticks are a great option. Flares are a great option, both road flares and actual shooting flares. Flares are a great option. You can also just carry a flag in your backpack as a location marker. Obviously stacking stones and all the cliche things, but if you're already packing for it, then it might be better to just not have to stack stones or whatever. Be better to have a flag, right?
Yeah.
So, and then glow sticks, anything that is obviously man-made is going to help. Now, with that being said, it is always in a survival situation where you are hoping to be rescued, it is always a better idea to stay still, or at least leave some kind of marker in a place that you can go back to, so people can find you, because they are going to start looking where you were last seen, right?
Yeah.
So you want to be close to that, because that's where they're going to start looking, and it means you'll be found quicker. But Red Dawn and all that, maybe you don't want to see. I don't know. Zombies. Don't want zombies to find you. So that is that. I mean, it could be also things like flashlight. This is a second flashlight because redundancy. This one's brighter. You could always, provided you have a fair amount of batteries and it's at night, you can always stick it in the ground, turn it on, stick it in the ground, shine it straight up. That way anything coming above you, like a plane or a helicopter, would see it, and also it'll illuminate the trees if you're in that kind of a situation. So it would be helpful for that. Also you can put it into, if you have like a water bottle, you find a broken water bottle, whatever, and you have a waterproof flashlight, you can click it on, fill this with water, click it on, throw it in there, and then it effectively acts like a giant glow stick, which can be helpful to signal people too. And it can also be just helpful if you're camping and you forgot to bring a lantern. But it means that because lanterns are big, this is not so big, so. And that's also why I have two flashlights. Maybe I leave one as a signal for search and rescue, and then I have my other one, which I can use for flashlight things. So, and more chapstick should be with medical stuff.
Fair enough. So I think you covered everything I would have thought about for rescue, and more stuff. Next we go on to long-term stuff. Maybe you don't get found right away, so you need to eat, right? After water, food becomes our next most important thing. Whether you're trying to catch it or you pre-pack stuff. I know a lot of people, like we mentioned earlier, have opinions. A lot of people swear by MREs. I know some people like to say, oh, you can make your own for cheaper, just, trail mix and fruit cups. Probably but I would rather buy some kind of MRE because the shelf life's going to be so much longer.
Yep.
Cheaper is good, and if that's what you need to do, awesome. And if that's what gets the job done for you, fantastic. But I think if you have room in the budget and you can get something with a longer shelf life, might as well, right?
Right. No, definitely. I don't have any MREs to hand, but the main benefit to an MRE is its size and weight per calorie. MREs are really high in calorie, but they take a small space. I know a lot of people like, oh, I'll just bring canned goods because they're good forever or whatever. And those are fine to leave in your car if that's what you want to do. But MREs, one, their shelf life, but they also, you're not bringing a whole lot of extra weight with you, and not a whole lot of extra bulk with you. One thing I do always suggest, and it's something that if you were in the military or if it's in the Marine Corps, you probably know it, is to field strip your MRE before you pack it away, because the outer shell that keeps everything together isn't the part that keeps it fresh. That's the inner fresh. It's an MRE. Don't expect a gourmet meal. And stay away from case A MREs. Just saying. Yeah, so you take out all the extras that you don't need, like a spork or something like that, because it's on the list of things you should have is a good quality spork. So you don't need the crappy one that comes in there, right? You don't need, you might take out Skittles, which are awesome, but not necessary for survival. So you take out any of the, you might leave in the desserts because it's always good to have more calories, but you take out like the things that are taking up way too much space, like Skittle, any bottles of anything that might be in there. If you buy civilian ones, you might get like bottles of Tabasco. You're also going to get like wads of toilet paper, whatever, and you can take those and condense those down because they're good to have. But we'll get to that in a second.
Well, and I would even, I would say for the Skittles and the desserts, my thought process would be, didn't realize they were in there till you said something. Knowing that they're in there, maybe take them out, maybe save a little weight, save a little space, maybe leave a couple of them in there, because maybe
morale
it's a
boost.
nice little morale boost. Maybe you have kids, maybe you don't take
Oh, yeah.
any out, because if something hits the fan, nothing maybe is going to keep the kid either tolerable or easier to deal with, or
Cooperative, yeah.
Is that.
Or just shut them up.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, that's definitely a consideration that I wasn't thinking about. Yeah, so maybe you leave them all in there. Either way, you can always open it up, reorganize things, and then close it back up, because it'll save some space, because there is some air space in there, which saving space is always key. I know for this Go Pack, I don't have them currently, but I ordered survival tablets, which apparently taste like vanilla. I'm really hoping it's a good vanilla. But it's 12 tablets is like 2,400 calories. And it comes in a bottle of, it comes with 10-day supply. And it was like $40. Now, are you going to be happy eating that for 10 days? No. My plan is to, if it's not because if the expiration date has nothing to do with the packaging, which is kind of easy to tell for the most part. But if their expiration date isn't because of the packaging, but it's because of the actual food, then I'm probably going to take them, put them in a blender, blend them up so they're like take a day's worth, put it in a blender, blend it up, put it into like a Ziploc bag or like an airlock bag or something like that. And that way it takes up less space because it's flat packed and also not in the bottle anymore. I'm not going to worry about rationing because it's going to be one bag per day. And also being in powder form, it's something that you can mix in with water I mentioned that iodine tablets taste horrible, right? So that's something you can mix in with the water and have something a little more bearable. So that's my food plan. In addition to that, now that you've got me thinking about that, I might actually throw some like Skittles or trail mix or something a little tastier in there as well to because it's 10-day food supply. It's if I'm out there eating it for 10 days, it's going to grow old. So it's something to consider about because morale is a huge factor when you're in these kind of survival situations. But food is important. Figure out. You're gonna say something.
Oh, I was going to say.
Steamrolling you.
Oh, you're fine. You have lots to say, lots of thoughts and opinions.
I do all the thoughts and opinions.
Even something as simple as morale boost, and another side effect is it's sugar. And let's say you're on day 8 of your food supply, and there's not maybe you didn't bring sport drink, anything with sugar.
Right.
You pop those things of Skittles, that sugar energy and that the calories from all that stuff, it's going to hit you a little different. So it's going to make you feel better, and then you're going to get that like sugar buzz because now you've been 8 days without it. And so yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
or caffeine tablets can do the same thing.
Yeah.
Although that's a diuretic, and I wouldn't recommend it, even though I'm thoroughly addicted to caffeine in its present state. But if you are someone like me who's overly addicted to caffeine, you might throw in some caffeine tablets because you don't want to be in a survival situation going through withdrawals.
Right.
But another good option gets a little more into the hiking kind of scenario, but one great option for like summer or any time of the year where it's not terribly cold is there was a video I was watching by Grand Thumb, who he was talking about taking a jar of peanut butter, mixing in like a scoop or two of peanut protein powder for extra calories and protein, and mixing in some trail mix or dried fruit or whatever. You stir that up, and then that's something that you can pull out of your bag, eat a couple scoops, throw it back in your bag, keep going. And it's you want something mushier too, because that means it's higher water content, which means you're not going to need quite as much water, although you still need quite a bit. But it also means that it's going to be easier for your stomach to process. It means that you're going to get all of those calories instead of some of those calories being used to absorb the food. You want to stay away from like obviously fresh fruits because they're going to go bad, but like dried apples are going to be a really bad idea because they're actually calorically negative. And things like same as like iceberg lettuce. It takes more calories to process it than you get from that food. So it's calorically negative. Some technical issues over there.
We just got put on display for. I should tell Candace to go plug the podcast to her group chat that she's having right now. This will be out tomorrow. Feel free to watch it.
But yeah, so
calorie negative or calorie neutral foods.
Right. You want to stay away from those because you want as much calories as possible. However, I would recommend eating and exercising after eating the food you are planning on bringing, because you don't want the runs while you're out and about.
Right.
So that's something to consider as well. But in addition to that, medication, right? So if you're on heart pills, if you're on whatever pills that it might be, obviously you're going to want to pack ibuprofen, aspirin, things like that. But if you're on like some harder drugs for like, treating medical conditions, there's no point in packing 7-day supply if you're going to die after 7 days because you didn't bring meds. So bring some more meds, make sure you're paying attention to the expiration date on those.
Right. Also, um, I lost it.
Um, medication. Just bring medication.
Oh, I was
Right.
gonna say, yeah, another example, heart pills or whatever, insulin if you're a diabetic, that kind of stuff, like, whatever
Insulin,
you need.
definitely.
Yeah.
Whatever you need, just make sure you have it in your bag, because you might not have the time to go to your medicine cabinet at home and grab it, or you might only have like your day's worth of supply in your EDC. So
Right.
you want the other 10 days, 2 weeks, whatever the case is, uh, as much as possible. In all honesty, you might want that in your bag.
Or I know some places won't let you pre-fill a prescription or whatever. So in that case, maybe don't keep it in your bag, but keep it in a place that you know you're gonna remember it and you can grab it quick. Because
Right.
if Red Dawn happens or the zombies happen or whatever, there's a fire and you have 5 minutes to pack your bags and go. Fire is probably the best case scenario because you can probably get to a pharmacy in a couple days and go, my house just done
Oh yeah,
burned up. I need more stuff.
I need my stuff.
But
Right.
if it's
Yeah. No.
a the globe as we know it is on fire, and it is the worst of worst scenarios, and we are at the absolute worst timeline, and
Right.
you need to get on a bus in 5 minutes. Make sure you can find that stuff.
Oh yeah. I think that pretty much sums up food and medication.
Yeah.
Unless you got anything else. And on to fire. So
Yes.
again, thinking a little more long term or climate specific, right? Obviously, if you're in Canada in the winter, you're probably going to want to fire night one. And you might want something, you might want to bring a burner and a stove and things like something that you can guarantee, like a small burner, that puts out a good amount of heat, right? Because there are two reasons, really, or three reasons to start a fire. First is maybe it's a signal, right? Second is heat, which is probably going to be more important, especially if you're packing food. And then third is to cook food or boil water, as the case might be. So you're going to not only we'll go over some ideas for starting fires. Obviously, part of my EDC, as I showed before, was a just general lighter, which would be better than nothing. Although it's not always the best option. My second option is one of these. So it's pretty much like a miniature barbecue lighter. You use it to start your coals or propane in your barbecue. It's got the click on there, but this one is a jet lighter, and it's also windproof. So if it's windy, if it's raining, you're more likely to start a fire with a jet lighter than you are with a standard lighter, like what I was showing you a second ago. So that's an option as well. You can find tinder or tree branches or whatever you have. Another great option for tinder is shoe goo, which is a great thing to have in your bag as well. Or epoxies, like 5-minute epoxy or something like that, like JB Weld. Those are all flammable and pretty flammable at that. Not only that, if you take a big bottle, which I'm not advocating for it, but if you take a big bottle like this, and you mix those together, one, you could probably start a fire with just that because it gets real hot. Put your tinder in there. But two, it's also going to produce a lot of black smoke. So if you're somewhere in a survival situation where you need to be found, that is another way that you can get search and rescue's attention. Another thing is you can use the epoxy or the shoe goo or whatever to patch holes in your pack, in your shelter, in your waterproofing bag, in whatever, in your skin if you smear it on your face or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
I would say fire, in addition to the 3 things you talked about. I think it also serves maybe in a hotter place, Arizona, where maybe you think you don't want a fire, or like you're in the middle of Nevada. Having a fire also, again, talking about morale and the psychology of this kind of
Yep.
stuff, it has an effect. It makes you could make you feel more comforted, make you feel like maybe some
Hmm.
whatever wildlife's going to leave you alone at night because there's a fire.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and stuff like that. And then they've also got arc lighters, which are a thing, which they just basically have
Yep.
a electrical current that together. So something that's maybe not reliant on fuel like a traditional lighter, but you do need
Right.
that arc to spark something, and I'm sure it runs off batteries. And once those batteries are done, much like the
Right.
fuel in a traditional lighter, you're SOL.
Right.
Um,
And then,
and I've
I mean,
even
at least with these, so actually jet lighters do have that same arc, just not as prevalent. Um, so sorry, I cut you off again.
Oh, you're good. And for fire starting tools, I've heard people say stuff as simple as there's all of that, and there's all the things you've mentioned. And then I've heard some people say, save your lint from the dryer and stuff
Yes.
it in a toilet paper roll.
You can do that, definitely. And especially if you soak them in petroleum jelly, which is highly flammable. And petroleum jelly, for anyone playing along at home, is essentially gel gasoline.
Right.
That's what petroleum is. So you can do that, which also, if you really needed it and you didn't need a fire so bad, you could use as anti-chafing stuff, right? Cotton balls, same thing. Yeah, there are plenty of ways to start a fire, and especially to have tinder. If you're again, if you're carrying a firearm, you can pull apart the shells for gunpowder. That'll get a fire started real quick. Another product that I'll bring up, which again I left it in the bag because I wanted to say waterproof, but it's kind of along the same. It's kind of the modern take on flint and steel, although flint and steel is another good option when paired with tinder. But it's essentially a beefed up version of the of a lighter's sparker, right?
Okay.
So it is.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see that,
I
but
can see it sparking.
it throws the sparks instead of just keeping it controlled like a normal lighter. So you could, in theory, in a survival situation, rip apart a lighter for that. But it also came with little instructions on how to make a lean-to and a fire and all that good stuff for other people. But then it came with some of these. Let's see if I can.
There we go.
There
That's
we go.
open.
So it came with some of these, and then I bought some extras and threw them in the bag. And what those are waterproof tinders. Not quite sure how they're waterproof. Haven't tried them out. But it's the same kind of idea. Again, you can do cotton balls and petroleum jelly. Another good option that I learned in like my Boy Scout days was you can take a 9-volt battery and steel wool and press the 9-volt battery to steel wool, and it turns the steel into red hot. And you can use that to light fires as well, which is a great option if it's too windy for lighters and such. But I think we've kind of come past that a bit. I think that was a little more prevalent when I was younger as an option.
Yeah.
But I mean, if that floats your goat, right? But another 2 options for tinder or for fuel source is, one, you should have an axe. Now this is a bearded axe. The reason being is because one, bearded axe Vikings, all that coolness. But 2, you can put your hands behind it in either direction, although this is definitely more dangerous, and you can shave wood. So if you need tinder, right, so you cut off your bark, which doesn't burn well, however you want to do it, and then you can go up to the tree and run the axe blade along the tree and collect shavings, which allows you to make tinder. But you can also hack off tree limbs because it's a fairly large handle. You can hack off tree limbs. You can even cut down a tree if you were dedicated enough. Yeah, that should be. Tree limbs are always going to be better than the main tree itself unless the tree is dead, because the tree limbs aren't going to be as moist. Another option, so maybe you got thicker or more tough material you're trying to get through, something like this. Believe it or not, this is a saw.
Yeah, I've seen
it's
those
a
before.
cord saw. Yeah, and so you either put it in a U shape around it and pull it back and forth, or you put it in a loop around it and then back to you. Whatever works. It depends on the tree that you're kind of trying to cut through. But they're fairly good products. I've used them, but I haven't like tried to cut down a tree. I've just kind of tested them, before. I haven't gone crazy with them. But it's another good option. Maybe you don't want to expend as much calories as this would take. Maybe you don't want to create the noise that this would take, or whatever like that. But yeah, fires are important because, like you were saying, morale and everything like that. Keeping away animals, because I can't think of an animal other than humans that likes fire. And then also keep away bugs. Like, you don't want to catch malaria just because you're out in, or I don't know if you can, but West Nile virus or something. Whatever the cool kids are blaming mosquitoes for these days. I don't want to catch something from bugs or, whatever insects that might be out there just because if I can light a fire, it works. And again, talking about redundancy, both my Benchmade and also my Gerber both have saw blades on them as well, or at least saw portions. So if I really needed to, I could use one of those, although I packed better options. There's always the option of just burning down a tree, but it's a little dangerous. Although it would get everyone's attention for a while off. Starting a forest fire. Don't start forest fires. Smokey the Bear will be very angry at you. And then I think that wraps that up. So hygiene, which I don't have here. Shame on me. And the one thing, so hygiene, it's a morale booster. Obviously, it keeps you from smelling bad, especially if you're traveling with other people. But it also is, like I'm saying, morale booster, but it also is a first aid thing, being that if you're out and about for, 7 days or so,
right,
you don't clean yourself, you might start developing sores because of chafing or because of rashes or because of whatever, because you're not cleaning yourself enough.
Right.
Also, that just, right.
I was going to say, not only that, but it's just you're out, you're covered in sweat, you've walked through dirt, now you're covered in grimy soot, and then you walk by a tree and the tree cuts you, and now you're bleeding and your skin is covered in this grossness, and then maybe you trip and you roll through mud, and you're collecting not just sores and rashes and stuff as you're moving through the environment and getting hot and sweaty and overheated, but also to get to this point, things obviously haven't gone well for us.
Right. We had a bad day.
And being clean is going to help any future not positive things that happen to us mitigate risk of things like what you were going to get to, I think, which is infection from wounds or sores or gashes or what have you. Maybe you're making a fire and you fall into your fire and now your hands have blisters and the blisters pop. Or maybe you're, shaving that tree or what have you and you slip and you cut yourself somehow because you don't have an axe and you're doing it with your knife. And you're filthy and you're dirty. Right. So it's a big part of keeping yourself alive because being clean means you're hopefully going to prevent or beat whatever grimy nastiness is on you and keep you from
Right.
getting an infection, hopefully.
Oh, definitely. And yeah, no, I mean, that pretty much covers everything that I was going to bring up. There's some, like, I would say bare minimum baby wipes. I recommend unscented baby wipes because I don't know, like the scented ones, that overly sweet smell kind of bothers me after a while. But baby wipes are fantastic. They also make bigger ones, like essentially big baby wipes that are branded for camping and stuff like that. I don't like those because you can buy like 100 baby wipes for $20, or you can buy like 8 of those for $8. Like 20 cents per or dollar per. I mean, and that's just, I mean, that it doesn't seem like much, but that all adds up as you're putting together this pack. Like I said, I'm about $400 into my pack, and I haven't bought the backpack itself. I haven't bought some of the other odds and ends that I want externally. I've done all the internal stuff other than just filling my Camelback with water. But I also might need a new sleeping bag. I have to check the state of my old one. But yeah, so it gets expensive, and then like you might want to use more than one baby wipe per day, because like you're cleaning off your hands, or you're cleaning. Maybe you don't want to break into your first aid kit, so you use one of the camping towelettes, whatever, baby wipes, big baby wipes, to wipe off your hands. Now you're down to 7. Well, if you do that 3 times a day, every time you eat, then you're out in like 2 days, or pretty much. Whereas like, and it's going to take up a lot more room. Whereas if I buy a thing of baby wipes, one that doesn't take up very much space, and I have 100 of them. And yeah, they're not as big, but I mean, 100 baby wipes last for a while. Trust me on that one. A personal experience. But yeah, so but I mean, from there, everything else is things that you might want, for morale or for whatever. I recommend deodorant, not gel, but stick deodorant, because gel deodorant will melt and get everywhere. Had that happen, and I think I was 16 and went camping. It was hot. It was on the 10th floor, and it coated the entire 10th floor in, I think I was using Old Spice at the time. So gel, yeah. Well, also I was out of deodorant for the next week, which sucked. But it prevents chafing. It can prevent irritation. It could just be a morale boost as well. And also it prevents perspiration, which is kind of a way of limiting your water output, but not a large degree. Toothpaste, toothbrush, you can. It's up to you. I would say if you're trying to have a 2-person go bag or more, bring toothbrush, toothpaste, and deodorant and things like that. Because it, like, if you're around someone who stinks, you're going to end up hating them. So, so again, it's morale.
Yeah.
And then just odds and ends. So again, flashlight, it's an odd and end, because I think we're pretty much done, unless you had anything for hygiene.
I am pretty much done. I think I gave my big spiel, and I think you wrapped it up pretty nicely.
Yeah, and so for some other odds and ends, if anyone noticed, my lighter is actually wrapped in duct tape, because duct tape is infinitely useful. It can be used as, instead of ace bandages to wrap wounds, it can be used to patch holes in tents. It can be used for a lot of things. You're always going to need it. I wrapped around my lighter, so that way I don't have a big roll of duct tape rattling around. And you can still get like 30 or so feet of it. And then make sure, though, to fold over the end of it into a little tab, because that means it's going to be a lot easier to repair things. And if you're already in a stressful environment, make it easier on your future self and not make it more stressful. And then notebook and pen. So these are actually tied together with some just string, black string that I had laying around. But again, the pen is wrapped in electrical tape. And these are both made by Write in the Rain, which are fantastic. Write in the Rain, like it allows you to write in the rain. So what a concept, right? But also the paper doesn't disintegrate to water. The pen can write when wet, which is great. All sorts of things. And again, if you need, like, you're applying a tourniquet, or you need to track medical supplies on a person, or you need to write letters to yourself so you aren't going insane, right? A bunch of different reasons to have it. But it's a great option. This could be, hopefully not tied together because that's just weird, but could be part of your EDC as well. The Write in the Rain notebooks fit really well into your pocket. I've had several of these notebooks over the years, and they are fantastic. In addition, on the inside, you have all sorts of stuff for measurement conversions, English to linear measurements. So how many, let's see, how many feet are in 1 mile statute? Didn't know what 1 mile statute was. I think that's just normal mile. Or how many yards are in 1 mile nautical? If you want it to be part of your EDC, it's a great option. It also gives you map scales and all of that good stuff, and some more tools for measuring out maps. On the back of it, it has 2 rulers, one in centimeters, one in inches.
Okay.
Other way, one in inches. And then in addition to that, maybe that's it. Yeah, that's it on the back. You can write down whatever information you might find pertinent, or notes to yourself in that kind of survival situation. When I was in the Marine Corps, I had one that had a bunch of information, like it was a quick reference on firearms, essentially, because my job was to fix them. But you could have it, if it's going into your go bag, you could have it on, you could have information, that you've learned over the years that you might forget in a stressful environment. Whew. Long video.
Right, which brings us to our very last point, and something that we've said, Mark, more than I have, which is train. Whether it's first aid, whether it's packing your bag,
Hiking,
unpacking your bag, hiking, if you running, going to the gym, whatever, sharpening your knife, making a fire, just any of these weird skills. This is something that you legitimately have a concern for. If this is something more than just kind of a passing fancy, maybe I'll make one. If you think, I want to do this because it's a thing that makes sense, make sure you can use the darn thing, and make sure you can carry the darn thing.
Yeah.
Because it's silly to have it and not be able to.
Right, exactly. And think about it too, as we talk about with EDC, and Joe talks about with his cameras. I've talked about with various like guns and knives and cameras and other stuff. The most important thing is the thing you're always going to have with you, because there's no point in spending $800, $1,200. They make the pre-made bug out bags that are only like half of what you need, and half of what's in there is half of the things you don't need. And those are, $600-$700. And they can get more expensive, but it doesn't matter if that's not what you're going to carry with you. So if it's something like, this, which only has food, water, a med kit, and that is it, then that is better than nothing.
Right.
So it doesn't need to be huge and extensive, but something that you will bring with you. Having the best pocket knife in the world doesn't matter if you're not going to bring it with you. And like Joe was hitting on, get training, especially when it comes to medical stuff. Get training.
Right. And talking about the pre-made kits, it's not something we talked about in the video at all. But they are things. And last time you were down here, we had a mutual friend who also served, and a YouTube channel I like. We put on the Modern Rogue, and they were breaking apart a everyday carry backpack kit. Yeah, bug out bag.
Oh, yeah.
And talking about everyday carry kits and stuff. And I don't think you were quite as vocal as our other friend was, but he was astounded, I think, to put it nicely, by some of the stupid stuff that the manufacturer of the bag thought was necessary to put in the kit. Even the hosts of the show were like, why? But okay.
I didn't need this.
Yeah.
The more dangerous thing, though, with that, because the reason I wasn't so vocal is I just don't care. Like, oh, you brought extra things with you? Well, if you can hike it in, then sure. If you can hike it in, hike it out, then it doesn't matter. My problem with those bags is more, it's when you buy a bag like that, and then one of the reasons I didn't bring it up really is, other than at the end here, is because I don't have one that I can refer to people. You know, if I had one where it's like, go buy this bag, it's everything you need, nothing you don't, go take it, then I could. But I mean, you know, if you're watching this video, you've heard certain brand names, certain stores and things like that I can recommend. But the problem with most of those pre-made bug out bags is that you get 50 items, right? Well, you might need another 25 to make it an entire bag.
Right.
But also, you don't need 25 of those original things. So, yeah, you might get a discount, but in the end, you're probably going to spend more. Like, most of those bags don't have camelbacks. Most of them don't have good knives.
Right.
Most of them don't have good med kits. You know, so do your research, and if you're already looking for, you know, 49 of the 50 items, and then you know you're going to have to add 10 more, you might save some money that way. But if it's significantly cheaper, that should be a red flag.
Yeah, and I would even say, to a certain degree, I think some of those kits might be dangerous, right? If earlier this year or late last year, whenever that fire got closer than I would have liked to where I live, but not close enough or out of control enough for us to need to be evacuated, if I would have went and panic bought one of those kits and another fire comes around, I buy it and assume it's everything I need. I don't open it, and then I get into a jam, and I'm like, got some problems
I have
here.
no way to deal with this.
Right.
Right.
So I think, I think that's a fairly important caveat. If you're going to buy one of those or entertain buying one of those, read what's in it. And even then, when you get it, open it up. Because there's probably things you're going to want to add to it if you go that route.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing, so if you do buy one of those, the first thing you should do, regardless of whether you're going to add more to it or subtract things from it, is go through and remove all the plastic packaging. Because when you buy those, generally everything's individually wrapped. Keep the instructions with them. I do recommend that, but I tape certain things, like my bigger med kit. Let's see if I can find it again somewhere in this pile over here. My bigger med kit has the. Is it not in this pile? Did I put it in the bag? I might have put it in the bag. Anyway, it has the expiration date. I cut it off of the original packaging and then taped it on the inside. So that way I know if I know that I still have the expiration date, but and all the pertinent information with that. But at the same time, I don't have to keep the original packaging. Keep the instructions because, oh, I took a class in first aid. Well, that's cool, but when you get injured, did the person patching you up take that same class and remember all the things you remember? Right. So keep the instructions with it, remove all the plastic packaging, remove all the extra packaging and stuff that might be on there, and then stress test it. Like take some closed up gallon jugs of water, which I need to refill this, but take like 4 of them, stack it in the bag, and go on a walk to figure out, is this going to support weight? Is this going to be what I'm going to use as a final backpack? Because generally, at least in my experience with those, the backpack is the weak point. Most of the stuff inside is okay. It could do with some better knives or whatever. I really want to see like Benchmade or Oakley or someone like that coming out with one of these bags, who would put quality gear in it. Although that bag would probably be $1,000-$2,000, but especially with everything name brand Oakley. Yeah, so take it out, figure out what you need, what you don't need. If there's something that you don't know how to use in there, research it, train, figure it out. And then once you're done and you get your kit all compiled, take it camping.
Right.
Take it on a long hike. So you can get used to the weight, figure out whether or not you need to slim it down because it has too much weight, or whether or not you can carry more.
Right. And if you go on hikes or if you go camping, it's a great application for this bag. It's not just meant the fire's too close, I'm evacuating. The hurricane hit, I'm evacuating. The zombies have taken over, I need to go. A great stress test of your kit is going camping. And if something goes south, hopefully it doesn't. But if it does, you'll be thankful that you put the thought into making it and that you brought it with you. Because especially in an application like camping, you can get hurt, you can get lost, whatever. Bag should arguably be with you in that kind of situation where something can happen.
Yeah, I think having it as an emergency camping bag is a great option, or emergency hiking bag. Like, do you need all of it in there? Maybe not, but do you need maybe more food that people aren't going to look at you super weird? Like, why are you eating vanilla tablets? Maybe you throw in some Chef Boyardee or something. I don't know, but so you might want to throw in some other things to supplement if you're going on a normal hike or whatever. But I mean, most people apparently, not the way I was used to camping, but I went camping after I got out of the Marines, and we pulled up to a campsite that was cordoned off for us, and we pulled up our car to it, and like everything, there's already a fire pit, there's already tables. I'm sitting there like, this might as well be a hotel room, and for a situation like that, the backpack or the go bag shouldn't be all that you brought, right?
Yeah.
Unless the point of that situation is to test it.
Right.
And if that's the case, then go find a wildlife preserve, drive out in the middle of nowhere, make sure you can remember where your car is, and then camp there. Because if you have a shower and water and all that other stuff, that's cheating. You're cheating yourself really by not preparing yourself. But yeah, get the training in, and that's the most important thing. And whether you're watching this channel for sword fighting, get training in. If you're watching it for survival stuff, get training in. If you're watching it, maybe we do some video game shows later, get your training in. Like there's no point in your life should you not be training to some degree, or at least reading or something, trying to educate yourself. Because education is like the point of living, right? So
right.
Education.
Right. There's a reason there's that quote, knowledge is power, right?
Right. Like that's the point. So yeah, so take everything we said with a grain of salt. Know that we are not professionals in survival. We were just a couple of dudes with some ideas. And do your research, figure out what's going to work for you, what's not going to work for you. Look up, like I said, Red Cross has some first aid classes generally. YMCAs generally have first aid classes. Call your local police department, see if they know of any first aid classes they can recommend in the area. Sometimes they're the ones actually hosting it. So get that kind of training in, if you don't know how to use something in your medical kit, don't use it. It's probably going to do more harm than good, like a tourniquet. Always give your medical supplies to someone with more education on the subject, if you're at all possible. And then, just stress test it and then do research, because you might go camping and everything works, but then you do some research and something works better. Or like the taping, putting your tape around the lighter or the pen. Like that's not something that was something that was, I learned from NCOs when I was when I was not an NCO. So when I was first starting to go on field ops, so like learn from other people. And we have this great resource called YouTube. Go do research. If you don't understand anything that we've talked about, or if you want brand names or anything like that, feel free to, hit us up, or, go on YouTube, search it.
Yep.
And that's kind of the, situation that we're in. It's just do more research.
Right. So I think once again, we have successfully beat a dead horse.
Oh yeah, this one really did that.
Right. So thank you guys for tuning in. If you stuck through all of this, thank you for tuning in.
For your insanity.
Exactly. I know you probably came here hopefully for the sword stuff. Hopefully you sticked around for this. And if we do anything other interesting things, hopefully you will come along for the ride with those things with us as well. As always, I've been Joseph Pavlenko, joined by
Mark Carrico.
There we go. I will point to the right direction one week.
Someday.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
You're muted.
Yeah. So yeah, and that was the entire point of the channel. I think we covered it in our first video. It's things that we think are interesting that you guys hopefully think are interesting as well. So again, thank you. And we will see you next week. Thanks, guys.
Bye.